On today's question of faith, is Pope Leo a unifier? Hey everybody, this is Question of Faith. I'm Deacon Mike Hayes. I am the Director of Young Adult Ministry here in the Diocese of Cleveland.
And I'm Father Damian Ference, the Vicar for Evangelization.
Ooh, long week for Pope Leo, huh? I mean, he met with everybody under the sun. Saw a meeting with the Vice President the other day and getting an invitation from the President to come to the United States. So we'll see how quickly he takes that invitation.
And where he goes,
where
Chicago,
he goes.
Philly,
Yeah.
I think he would have to go, but who knows?
Yeah.
And
maybe
then probably in Pope Francis's style, some strange place that you wouldn't expect him to go. And by strange, I mean maybe not a major city, but who knows?
Yeah, that's right.
We'll see. We'll see.
Maybe Cleveland. Who knows?
Oh, that'd be great. Or Akron, or Lorraine, or Painesville.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah.
Enough infrastructure to support the visit. You need that. But so the question, is he the great unifier? And we were talking before the show about how it seems that most people are very excited about the new Holy Father. And we live, as you know, as we know, in a country that's polarized, in a world that's polarized, and unfortunately at many times in a church that's polarized.
Yeah, just a touch.
Yeah, and so it seems like wherever people are finding themselves on the spectrum, I like Bishop Molestic says it this way, that you got to color within the lines. So maybe you have a more social justice feel for the church. Maybe you have a more charismatic feel. Maybe you have a more traditional liturgical feel.
Yeah.
Wherever you find yourself, that's where you are. Color within the lines of the church. You still have to follow what the church asks us to do and the teachings of the church, doctrine, dogma, all that. But there are going to be certain things you accentuate more than the others.
Right, yeah.
Everybody's a little different that way.
Yeah, but you still have to follow the Pope, and the councils are still the councils, and
Yeah.
all those things, right?
So it seems like that everybody's pretty happy about Pope Leo XIV, and that's so refreshing to me. Yeah. And I know it's early; it's only been a week or so, but even the generation born after 2013, so the kids who are currently in grade school and high school or early years of high school, I suppose, because Gen Z was born between 97 and 2012. So this next generation, they're calling them Generation A or Alpha. But they're also, according to Gene Twangy, are also being referred to as the polars because the world that they're born into is so polarized.
Yeah, that's interesting.
And, of course, Jesus didn't come to divide and destroy. He came to gather the nations to himself, and he came to unite, Father, that they may all be one. And so, I mentioned this last time, that Cardinal Burke and Father James Martin were both thrilled with the pick.
Yeah.
I found that refreshing.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's like it's funny. Someone said on one of the sites, I forget which one, they said that it seems like everybody's trying to make the Pope like on their side. It's like, look, he said this over here. And someone said, yeah, but he said this over here. And he said this over here. And I was like, well, yeah. I think Emily said this last week that for people who didn't like Pope Francis, he'll be a more tolerable Pope Francis for them, and I think I added to that. I said for those who maybe Pope Benedict or John Paul II wasn't their favorite, he'll be a more tolerable version of them too. So
yeah, well, he seems certainly to be a man of continuity, history, tradition.
Yeah, that's for sure.
And he's giving nods to everybody. Obviously, Pope Francis visiting his tomb. Just this weekend, he had what a lot of people will say is John Paul II's crozier. It has the crucifix. It's kind of modern art, silver. Yeah. But he actually got that from, not John Paul II. John Paul II got that from Paul VI.
Paul VI, right, yeah.
But he didn't live long enough for him to be known by it the way that JP2 was. So I think he's acknowledging this very long lineage of Holy Fathers, almost 270 of them, all the way back to Peter, and sees himself as one who needs to unify, challenge, comfort, all at the same time. And so far, so good.
And he seems to be switching accoutrement around a little bit too. Like he had Francis's, crozier one day, he had John Paul II's crozier one day,
and the different pectoral crosses that he's worn, his different styles of garb. So I think he's certainly a man of, what do we say, like continuation, but also he's he's adding to the tradition as he moves forward.
Yeah,
so
that's right.
It's the Catholic both and. It's the risorgimento and the aggiornamento, the two movements of going back to the sources and then moving forward and being what we need to be in the world today.
And I think as a canon lawyer, there's always something along those lines too. I think that we could look at is that. I think a good criticism of Pope Francis, who I adored, right? I think a good criticism of him would be that, he's talked off the cuff so often, and then the canon lawyers would have to go back through the books and figure out, well, where is he pulling that from?
What did he really mean by what he said? What did he really
mean by what he said?
And what was the context, all that?
Yeah, all that stuff. And they said, well, this guy will be a little different, that he'll lead with that. So no, here's where this comes from in the tradition. Here's what the last pope said. Here's where this comes from in canon law. And every I will be dotted, every T will be crossed, and then he'll put out a statement, as opposed to, sort of having more off-the-cuff things on the papal plane, maybe.
Yeah, and still with a very pastoral touch and a love for the poor and a love for those on the peripheries and the margins. So I think you've got that. I think some people are very excited that he's both a math major
that's right.
and a canon lawyer, because there will be a precision and a clarity that wasn't present in Pope Francis. But again, I said this before, I really think the Lord allows the popes to be, and I understand we've had bad popes in the past.
Sure.
I don't think Pope Francis was a bad pope. I think that we had the pope at the time in church history when we needed that particular Holy Father, and so too with Pope Leo XIV.
Yeah, that's probably fair. Yeah.
And it also takes time to pass to see what you actually had.
Yeah.
Like the piece that I wrote for Word on Fire that was published the day after the Holy Father died. It's actually, I just noticed it's in the new Northeast Ohio Catholic Magazine. They reprinted it. It's the last article. But I say that when it comes to a prophet, when you have a prophet in your midst, you usually don't recognize it at the time. It's after time passed, you're like, oh yeah, he was onto something there. That was helpful. It's like your parents discipline you. You're like, my mom hates me. And then you realize later on, oh, that was actually my mom loving me. It's that kind of stuff.
I think that way about pastors and bishops sometimes too.
Yeah.
It's, when they were there and you were working with them, you cursed them when they were there. And then years later, that's what Father Chuck was doing. Like now I get it. It's kind of thing. We all have hindsight too. And here's a funny for you. Maybe not so funny, but if it's interesting. So I'm walking around the other day in my neighborhood, and I get a text message from my friend John, whose son is graduating from Villanova. Oh. And he says, sort of angrily, he said, "Now, wouldn't you think they could get the Pope to do a video message for the graduates today? I mean, wouldn't you think that would be an easy get since he's a grad of Villanova and everything else?" And so I said, the president was talking the other day, and he asked about how they could engage him, and he said, I'd love to have you as the commencement speaker one day, and he said, sorry, I think I'm busy that weekend, sort of jokingly. Yeah. And 2 seconds later, I get a second text. He goes, never mind, he sent one. So they did engage him. He did give a very brief video message to the graduates of Villanova. So congrats to Jack McDermott, my friend's son, who graduated from Villanova.
Father Ryan Kubera, who's the pastor of St. Mary of the Falls in Olmsted Township. He's actually a former teen of mine at my first parish.
Yes, I remember, yeah.
And I help out on weekends over there. I had the 11 o'clock this weekend, and then I saw him later on down in Hudson for Father Anthony Donatelli, his first Mass.
Anthony.
And as we were vesting, I said, hey, you and the Holy Father are both graduates of Villanova, because he got it's a master's in parish administration or something, which is pretty cool. And
business administration, parish business administration, yeah.
And I said, I said I also am an alumni with him from the Angelicum, so we both went to schools that the Holy Father went to, which is pretty cool.
That is pretty cool.
Yeah.
My friend Lori went to the Catholic Theological Union, and so she was excited about that because he has a master's from there. So she was interested in and she said he even had some of the same professors that he had, so she thought that was kind of cool.
I saw one of his nun. She's not a nun, she's a sister, a scripture professor interviewed, and she remembered him. I mean, everyone says he was a great student. They also say he was really helpful, and he got his work done, but then helped other people get their work done.
Well, that's nice.
Really great.
That's good to know, yeah. Congrats to the newly ordained, by the way. Boy, have you ever seen the cathedral that full in your life? Maybe yours,
My
right?
ordination, we had 10, and it was a year after the abuse scandal, so it was a party. But no, it's been a while since it was like that. It was so joyful. The other thing is that all 8 of those men grew up in our parishes, in our diocese, and that's not true of every diocese. And a lot of dioceses have transplants because people move there for work. But these guys all grew up here, which is really cool.
That's
and so they know the diocese, they know the seminary, and just very exciting. And I taught all of them, too, so it was really cool to see. And Father John Hawkins, who I've known since he was in high school, asked me to vest him, so I had the honor of doing that.
Oh, very nice.
Because his youth minister was in my youth group, and then her husband took over and was his youth minister after a while, too. So they're just pretty cool spiritual lineage there. So.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And your ordination anniversary should be coming up, right?
It was the 17th.
The 17th.
It's been 22 years.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
it's a weird number, the double deuce. But, and you're on 1 year of being a deacon. Yeah.
Exactly. That's the 6 of us. So we've been trying to get together to celebrate, and we just can't find an agreeable date at this point. So we're looking at August at this point.
Yeah, that's kind of how it goes. Yeah, we try 1 a year. We used to try 2. It's harder the older you get, too.
Yeah, exactly.
The busier you get. So
it was nice. I went to Father Jeff Lindholm's Mass at Thanksgiving.
Oh, yeah.
He was thunderous in his homily.
I bet.
And I mean in a good way.
Passionate young man.
Yeah, he was really great. And he said he kept trying to pawn the homily off on Bishop Woost. Bishop Woost wasn't having it. So he said, no, you preach.
Well, Father Ryan Kubera was Lindholm's priest when he was in high school.
Right.
He
was
there.
Raphael. Yes.
Yeah, he was there because I took his 11 a.m. at St. Mary of the Falls. That's why I took it, so he could go to that first Mass. So we all help each other out.
That's nice. Yeah, it was fun. All right, so hopefully Pope Leo will be the great unifier and continue to unify our church, our world, maybe.
Well, you know what, too?
Yeah.
Like, even with the Orthodox.
Oh, sure, yeah. He met with them the other day.
He met with the Patriarch.
Yeah.
If we could do that and unite church, holy cow. And he spent a lot of time, maybe day 2, meeting. Obviously, our Byzantine brothers and sisters are under the Holy Father, but even reaching out to them early on and saying, we're all together here, that's very important stuff.
And that's a continuation of Francis's work, too. I mean, he had been talking about that since Easter was... was both Orthodox and Catholic and Roman Easter this year, so those matched up. So he said, maybe we should think about, just making that a thing. So.
And I don't remember. I'm sure Benedict wanted that too, and I remember Pope John Paul II because he was from Poland. Certainly, they were. It's a long path, but maybe it'll happen under Pope Leo. Who knows?
Exactly. I'll keep it on my radar as the delegate for ecumenical interfaith stuff here too, as well. So the Eastern Church Dialogue, which meets out at John Carroll, that's something we have on our radar for a while. So. So it'll be good. All right. You know who else has a good radar?
Dan First at Briefcase Marketing.
Yeah.
Oh, I got it right.
You know what they do. They make sure your church doesn't have scattered messaging or a bad website. Hey, one of your friends, Ted and Rita Stitzel.
Oh, yeah, from St. Mary's Hudson.
Yep, they're good friends of yours, and so he just did their website, doylemed.com.
Oh, wonderful.
So you can check that out. We'll put that in the show notes.
Stitzels are great. Well, they create marketing for your church-based ministry that inspires action and delivers results.
Briefcase Marketing will clarify your message to attract the right audience. They'll streamline your website to convert mere visitors into customers, donors, volunteers, parishioners. They'll create consistency to build trust and to deepen relationships across all of your marketing platforms, emails, ads, social media, and the like.
If you need proof, Briefcase Marketing gets great Google reviews. They've done superb work with our friends at Theology of the Body Cleveland, St. John Cantius Parish in Tremont, and we'll put samples of that work in our show notes. Make it easier for you to check them out.
Yeah, along with Doyle Med and Womankind, too, which he's done recently. So with a clear message and a compelling website, Briefcase Marketing will help you get more donors given to your mission, more volunteers ready to serve, more people sharing your message and being their advocates for you.
So visit their website. That's briefcase.marketing. We've got their link in the show notes, or text 308-627-1262, and our pal Dan First will take good care of you at Briefcase Marketing.
Amen. He's the man. I was going to ask you something. So you've got summer concerts coming up.
Yeah, so now that I'm the parochial vicar at St. John Cathedral,
Woo, woo.
Bishop asked that more young people be present down there, and there's a lot of young people who live in downtown Cleveland, maybe who we haven't seen yet or we don't see often. So every Wednesday night, starting next Wednesday, May 28th, we'll gather in the church at 5:30 for Vespers. So get that iBreviary app on your phone. We're going to use that. And then we're going to come outside into the courtyard, and we'll have food and drinks and live music from 6 to 8 p.m. Well, actually, 6:15 to 7:50, and then we'll end with night prayer. But
Nice.
all summer long, every Wednesday nights, Wednesday evenings live. You'll see the logo around town. You'll see some billboards. You'll see it on our digital screen. You might see it in some secular outlets. But I got a bunch of great musicians coming in all summer long, and it should be a lot of fun. So,
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Isn't Matt Frad's his
sister? Yeah, because I think she reached out to you
She
as
did, yeah.
young adult director, and you put her on to me, and I was just kind of birthing the idea at that point, and I said, all right, let's go.
That's
So
great.
that'll be
That'll
fun.
Softball season starts June 1st. Come on out and watch us at St. John Bosco Parish. We'll be out there
Wonderful.
all day long. So it'll be great. We're going to do a little sort of controlled scrimmage week before. So if you're heading around that area, you might see us out there as well.
Nice.
But every Sunday from like 12 to 5, basically, we'll be out there. We'll have a couple of games on Saturday this year just to kind of fill a schedule out. A couple of new teams, so that's fun. 171 young adults playing softball this
Wonderful.
summer, so it'll be good.
I drove past St. John Bosco this afternoon. I was meeting with Sister Margaret Taylor and Sister Elizabeth. Sister Carol.
Okay.
Sister Carol was my principal from kindergarten to third grade, and Sister Margaret Taylor was my 8th grade teacher.
That's great.
And now they're in leadership positions over there. And on July 19th, we'll be at Bosco for a 4 p.m. Mass, and then we'll do a procession down to the shrine, which is one of the Jubilee sites for the
Right.
diocese. So put that on your calendar. Come on out. We're just kind of buttoning up some details on that today.
Nice. I was out there last night for YCP had an event, and the great Bill Preble was their speaker. So it was
Where? At John Bosco or Incarnate Word?
Incarnate Word, yeah.
Really?
Because Gabe Kessler, who's
Oh,
been
yeah,
the president,
Gabe's there.
he works there.
Yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah.
he got them a room. So he was good. Bill did a nice job, and Bill's in formation for the diaconate. So he's a year away now, knock wood, God willing. So we'll pray for Bill and for all the guys who are in formation.
His wife Millie dropped off some vegan lasagna last
Really?
week.
At the cathedral?
It was so good.
She's good. She's a
Tasted
good
like
cook.
meat.
Wait, did I ever tell you my restaurant idea? This is when I was still doing the food show. We had a restaurant. Now, remember, the host I worked with was Jewish. And so we said that we were going to open a restaurant that would be a glatt kosher restaurant called Treif, which is, food you're not supposed to eat. But all the food would actually be glatt kosher food, but on the menu it would say, tastes like shrimp or something.
Oh.
But it would be glatt kosher.
That's funny.
And so we tested that idea with a rabbi. He said, no, even the idea of eating treif would be sinful. So we thought that was a little much, but needless to say, we never ventured into the business. But the 6th Sunday of Easter will be our business this weekend, and I'm preaching this weekend, actually. So the gospel is from John. Jesus said to his disciples, "Whoever loves me will keep my word, and my Father will love him, and we will come to him and make our dwelling with him. Whoever does not love me does not keep my words, yet the word you hear is not mine, but that of the Father who sent me." I love the middle part of this gospel. "Peace I leave with you, my peace I give it to you. Not as the world gives do I give it to you. Do not let your hearts be troubled or afraid." So,
Yesterday, we had that same gospel at daily Mass, and the second graders from St. Michael's grade school in Independence came to Mass. And they did a little tour before in the cathedral, and I told the kids, I said, you're here visiting God's house. Obviously, he has a house in Independence too, your home parish, but here you're at the Mother Church, and you're dwelling here in his house. But what he came to do for you last week at your first communion was to dwell in your house, in your body. So God wants to dwell in us, and that indwelling happens first at baptism. But anytime we celebrate a sacrament, there's a deeper indwelling that God makes within us, and so that's why it's so important to frequent the sacraments.
indeed.
So. Cool.
All right, so frequent sacraments this weekend, and we'll have this and a whole lot more here next time on Question of Faith.